Part 47. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuchi. Chapter 461. In the abandoned flour mill. Even the sniper bullets that could penetrate reinforced concrete could not hurt Zhang Fengjai. Wang Hao, with a look of fear and regret in his eyes, immediately turned around and rushed into the office building. The 6 burly men who had used up a round of bullets also showed a look of fear in their eyes, and then directly threw away the submachine guns in their hands, screaming in fear and running away. Reaching out to suck the shells that fell on the concrete floor, 8 shells floated in the air, and Zhang Fengjai's 5 fingers on his left hand flicked on the shells as fast as the wind. Then, 6 shells directly penetrated the back of the heads of the 6 burly men. The other 2 shells penetrated the temples and eyebrows of the 2 snipers on the roof. After killing the 6 burly men and the sniper, Zhang Fengjai quickly glanced at the abandoned factory buildings around him, and couldn't help frowning. Because when he was frantically shot by a submachine gun just now, it was the best time to launch a sneak attack, but why didn't the top strong man hiding in the abandoned factory attack? What is the other party waiting for? Or what is he afraid of? However, thinking of Sulitzi and Sulixiu who were imprisoned in the office building, and Wang Hao who just rushed into the office building, Zhang Fengjai forcibly suppressed the doubts in his heart and quickened his pace to enter the office building. When he passed the broken glass door and passed through 5 thick load-bearing columns, he saw Wang Hao holding a pistol tightly in his left hand, with the muzzle of the gun against Sulitzi's temple. Sulitzi and Sulixiu were tied to 2 wooden chairs respectively. "Yezi, what's wrong with you?" Seeing Zhang Fengjai coming out from behind the load-bearing column, Sulitzi's face turned pale as paper in an instant, and she asked with a nervous look in her eyes. Sulitzi's overly nervous reaction and the direction of her gaze made Zhang Fengjai look down immediately, and then he couldn't help but shook his head with a bitter smile. Although his physical body level in the Great Perfection realm could ensure that his body would not be hurt by bullets, the clothes bought from the wholesale market were shot into sieves. If it weren't for the 6 burly men shooting bullets at his upper body due to their height, he would probably be standing in front of everyone with his body exposed. "Sister Litzi, don't worry, I'm fine." After shaking his head to Sulitzi to indicate that he was fine, Zhang Fengjai looked at Wang Hao, who was already alone, and warned him with a cold expression. "Wang Hao, if you put down your gun now, I can give you a quick end. Otherwise, I will let you taste what it means to be unable to live or die. Zhang Fengjai, kneel down immediately, otherwise, I will shoot her head off now." Facing Zhang Fengjai's naked threat, Wang Hao, with a hint of madness in his eyes, threatened at the top of his lungs. Seeing Wang Hao's emotions gradually getting out of control, his fingers vaguely had the urge to pull the trigger, and a hint of hesitation flashed in Zhang Fengjai's eyes. In fact, whether it was using the sword technique with the speed of the wind or mobilizing the Taoist silver needle in the sea of consciousness, he could get rid of Wang Hao before he pulled the trigger. But he was very worried that the top powerhouse hidden in the dark might take the opportunity to attack, which was the real reason why he had been hesitant. Although he had the Xian Lei Fu in his hand, he was not afraid of the top powerhouse sneak attack, but he was worried that Wang Hao, who was out of control, would kill Sulitzi by mistake. After all, he couldn't guarantee that the top strong man hiding in the dark would save Wang Hao who was attacked while attacking him. Therefore, Zhang Fengjai suppressed his impulse to attack and retreated to the side of the load-bearing column. "Wang Hao, don't hurt Sister Litzi. Let's talk it over." Although Zhang Fengjai didn't kneel down as he threatened, his nervous attitude of retreating also made Wang Hao calm down from his crazy mood. "Zhang Fengjai, if you don't want to see Sulitzi and Sulixiu get into trouble, leave the flour mill immediately." Facing Wang Hao's request, Zhang Fengjai quietly took a piece of cement from the load-bearing column, and then frowned and questioned. "Wang Hao, it's okay for me to leave the flour mill now, but how can you guarantee their safety?" "Zhang Fengjai, as long as you leave the flour mill now, I will use the means prepared in advance to leave Ningji City, and then I will promise to release them unharmed, Wang Hao promised solemnly. This. Facing Wang Hao's promise, Zhang Fengjai pretended to be thoughtful, and then thought for about 7 or 8 seconds, and finally nodded helplessly and agreed. Okay. I hope you, Wang Hao, can keep your word and do what you say. Otherwise, even if you escape to the ends of the earth, I can use special means to find you and torture you to death. Then, he slowly turned around and pretended to leave, observing Wang Hao with his peripheral vision. When Wang Hao's attention was slightly relaxed because of a long sigh of relief, the cement block in his hand popped out instantly and hit his left wrist directly. Ah! The pain formed instantly when the wrist was hit made Wang Hao scream, and the pistol also fell to the ground. When Wang Hao endured the pain in his wrist and bent down to pick up the pistol that fell to the ground, a Bigfoot wearing sneakers stepped directly on the pistol. The fear that suddenly emerged in his heart made Wang Hao kneel on the ground with a plop, and then kowtowed hard to beg. Zhang Fengjai, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have framed you and Sulitzi by kidnapping Xiaoxiu. Please spare my life. After reaching out to untie the rope that bound Sulitzi, Zhang Fengjai frowned and asked. Wang Hao, why didn't you ask the Taoist masters you specially invited to help? What is a Taoist master? Wang Hao asked, looking up at Zhang Fengjai with a puzzled look in his eyes. A Taoist master who is as invulnerable as me. After hearing Zhang Fengjai's reminder, Wang Hao couldn't help but smile bitterly and explained. Zhang Fengjai, if I can invite a powerful and terrifying person like you, then why would I go to such great lengths to force you to show up by kidnapping Xiaoxiu? If I have a powerful and omnipotent person like you by my side, do I still need to be wary of the joint suppression of the Qinglong Chamber of Commerce and the Black Tiger Chamber of Commerce and develop the Chamber of Commerce cautiously? After hearing Wang Hao's explanation, Zhang Fengjai suddenly realized that he seemed to have made a common-sense mistake. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 462. In an abandoned flour mill. Since the battle of the conferred gods more than 1,000 years ago, it has been difficult for Taoist monks who have been troubled by the aura of heaven and earth to successfully break through the golden elixir avenue. This also leads to the fact that strong people who can successfully encounter the realm of Jindan have become the most peak-level existences in China. The aloofness gradually forming in the hearts of such peak-level experts made them disdain to use sneak attacks to deal with a boy who was only 18 or 19 years old. So, the terrifying power that his mind just felt emerging from the flour mill is most likely the special consciousness bred from the Feng Shui treasure land that he has never discovered. After all, when he used 3 Taoist copper coins to condense the tracking mirror, the dazzling light that suddenly shattered the mirror came from the geomantic treasure land that could condense the level of spiritual beasts. Thinking of this, Zhang Fengjai directly stretched out his foot to kick Wang Hao unconscious, then walked to the window sill that lacked glass, and then reopened his sky eye to carefully observe the Feng Shui trend of the abandoned factory from a high position. Dragon Vein is a Feng Shui treasure land formed by gathering the 5 elements, integrating yin and yang, absorbing the aura of heaven and earth, and capturing the essence of the sun and moon. However, some Feng Shui terrain patterns, due to various reasons, may only be able to gather the elements of the 5 elements, or they may only be able to integrate the 2 qi of yin and yang, or they may only be able to absorb the aura of heaven and earth, or they may only be able to capture the essence of the sun and the moon. And terrain with a relatively single effect like this is collectively called spiritual veins based on the changes in the Feng Shui pattern it can present. The flour mill in front of me has been abandoned for more than 10 years. The 4 directions of southeast, northwest, and northwest do not occupy the ideal state of metal, wood, water, fire and earth, so it does not have the Feng Shui pattern that gathers the 5 elements. The concentration of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered in the flour mill is not even as high as in the city that is polluted by turbid air, so it does not have the Feng Shui pattern to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The power of the sun, moon, and stars is not only heavy and domineering, but also dazzling. the dilapidated and remaining flour mill building in front of you, as well as the weeds growing around it, also do not have the feng shui pattern to capture the essence of the sun and moon. So, now the flour mill only has the only feng shui pattern left, which is the spiritual vein that can integrate the two places of yin and yang. Recalling the records of the yin and yang feng shui pattern in Taoist classics, and then combined with the terrifying power gathered in the factory just now, he could roughly guess the feng shui pattern of the flour mill, and the changes and true grades of the spiritual beasts that would eventually be revealed. While secretly breathing a sigh of relief, Zhang Fengjai put away the Xianlei talisman in his hand, turned around and walked to Sulixiu, who looked lonely, then stretched out his hand to remind Wang Hao and asked, "Zioxiu, what should I do with this guy next?" "Zioxiu, I was so filled with hatred that I decided to kidnap and hurt you." Seeing that the decision of his life or death rested with Sulixiu, Wang Hao, with a flash of excitement in his eyes, quickly knelt in front of her to admit his mistake and beg for mercy. "Now I know I was wrong, please forgive me this time." However, when he saw from the corner of his eyes that Sulixiu was not moved at all, Wang Hao immediately gritted his teeth and promised, "Zioxiu, as long as you are willing to forgive me this time, I am willing to give up all my property, divorce Xiaoping, and then marry you with great fanfare." Facing the guarantee given by Wang Hao, Sulixiu, whose eyes gradually became misty, slowly knelt on the ground, and then hugged him hard. This made Sulixiu want to reach out to stop her, but she wanted to stop him. But Zhang Fengjai shook his head to stop him. Sulixiu, who hugged Wang Hao hard, quietly picked up the pistol that fell on the ground, pointed the muzzle directly at his heart, and then crawled into his ear and whispered softly, "Brother Hao, you used to be Zioxiu's favorite man, but now you are Zioxiu's most hated enemy, so go to hell." Bang! Accompanied by a loud gunshot, Wang Hao suddenly pushed Sulixiu away and looked down at the bleeding wound with a look of disbelief in his eyes. Because he couldn't believe that the woman he loved so much would shoot him, and it was even more difficult to accept that he, the all-powerful underworld man, would eventually die at the hands of a weak woman. "Sister, I'm sorry, forgive my sister for being willful before and being selfish now." When she saw Wang Hao fall to the ground with disbelief in his eyes, Sulixiu turned around and knelt in front of Sulixiu. After apologizing to her solemnly, she raised the pistol and pointed it at her temple. However, just when she was about to pull the trigger, a sudden dizziness hit her, causing her vision to go dark, and she climbed forward, but was caught in time by a pair of strong arms. "Sister Litsi, don't worry. Zioxiu's suicidal thoughts just now were just caused by temporary sadness and despair." Picking up Sulixiu directly, Zhang Fengjai walked out of the hall and comforted Sulixiu, whose eyes were full of worry. "When she gets enough rest and calms down her inner sadness, she will get back on her feet." "That's good." Sulixiu, whose inner trust in Zhang Fengjai had already turned into admiration, immediately nodded in relief. Looking at the 6 burly men lying on the ground, and thinking of the 2 snipers who died on the roof, and Wang Hao who died in the office building, Zhang Fengjai thought about it for a moment, then raised his foot and stamped hard on the ground. "On the ground. DeLong, if you don't want others to discover your existence, you'd better find a way to deal with the traces at the scene immediately." After hearing Zhang Fengjai's reminder, there was silence in the entire flour mill. Shrugging his shoulders, Zhang Fengjai reminded him in an indifferent tone, and then sped up and rushed to the factory gate. "Earth Dragon, it's up to you. Anyway, with my abilities and connections, the deaths of these people will not affect me at all." "Yi, who are you talking to?" Sulixiu turned around and looked around the factory, but found nothing, and couldn't help but ask. "An earth dragon, which is what we commonly call an earthworm." After a simple explanation, Zhang Fengjai glanced at the black Jetta parked behind the iron door and found that the car keys were still hanging under the steering wheel. He immediately opened the rear door with a look of surprise in his eyes, and then put Sulixiu in the car. On the back seat. "Sister Lizzie, you drive. Turn the key to start the car, then turn the front of the car and drive toward the door. When Sulitsi drove the black Jetta car slowly out of the gate, the ground of the entire flour mill suddenly shook, and then a gap about 10 meters long and 2 meters wide opened on the ground in front of the office building. Then, a strong suction force formed from the gap, directly sucking the bullet casings, submachine guns, and 6 burly men who fell on the ground into the gap. Immediately afterwards, the suction force began to increase continuously, and finally the 2 snipers and sniper rifles on the roof, as well as Wang Hao and the pistol in the office building were sucked into the gap. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yuchi. Chapter 463. Looking through the rearview mirror of the black Jetta, Zhang Fengjai raised his mouth slightly to reveal a scornful smile as he watched the drastic changes in the abandoned factory behind him. In the Taoist tradition, there is the mystery of the universe that yin and yang are 2 yin and yang. 2 yin and yang give birth to 4 images, 4 images give birth to 8 trigrams, and 8 trigrams transform all things. In the spiritual veins that integrate yin and yang to form the feng shui pattern, a special crystal stone with black and white colors, containing the mysterious artistic conception of life and death, and with the effect of resurrection will gradually be cultivated. This special crystal stone containing the mysterious artistic conception of life and death is no less attractive to cultivators and monsters than the dragon crystal cultivated by dragon veins. However, there is a huge gap in strength between the spirit beast condensed by the yin and yang spiritual veins and the giant dragon condensed by the dragon veins, which leads to the consciousness bred by the yin and yang spiritual veins. While acting cautiously, they are also very timid in character. Facing the tracking mirror condensed by 3 Dao copper coins, in order to protect the secret of its existence, the consciousness of yin-yang spirit vein directly smashed the mirror when the mirror just showed the internal picture of the flour mill, which shows its cautious style of behavior. Facing the Jindan realm, which has the ability to peek out of the sea of consciousness, the consciousness of yin-yang spirit vein instantly burst out all the power, which is only used to defend its own safety and dare not fight back. This is the real reason why yin-yang spirit vein has never secretly attacked him. It's not that I don't want to, but I don't dare. At the same time, it was not until the moment he left the flour mill that yin-yang spirit vein dared to come forward to clean up the traces left by the gunfight just now, which is enough to show its cowardly character. Through the deep perception and understanding of the Hunyuan taking heart method during this period, Zhang Fengjai knew that the deleted heart method was actually incomplete, lacking the key part of the perception and tempering of the artistic conception, which eventually led to the state of mind being flawed and leading to the devil. The crystal stone containing the mysterious artistic conception of life and death cultivated by yin-yang spirit vein is the key to completing the Hunyuan taking heart method. Therefore, after withdrawing his gaze from the flour mill behind him, Zhang Fengjai began to consider how to capture or kill the consciousness of the yin-yang spiritual vein alive, and then seize the crystal cultivated in its body to make up for the missing part of the Hunyuan taking heart method. The yin-yang spiritual vein, which can condense into a complete spirit beast shape, has a strong strength that can touch the Jindan realm. He wants to rely on his own cultivation and the speed of strength improvement. Under the limitation of the heart method and artistic conception, he doesn't know when he will have the strength of a top strong man. As the 2 strongest life-saving trump cards in his hand, the Black Thunder Talisman and the Zhenshan Talisman have the power to kill the consciousness of the yin-yang spiritual vein, but the uncontrollable attack force is likely to destroy the crystal cultivated by the yin-yang spiritual vein with great difficulty, so the plan to use the life-saving trump card was directly rejected. At the reunion dinner on Mid-Autumn Festival, the conversation between the great-grandfather and the second grandfather vaguely revealed that they seemed to be subject to some special restrictions. They could not leave Shushan Zhangzhuang in a short time, and they could not use their power to deal with the yin-yang spiritual vein. Zhang Fengjai couldn't use his trump card to save his life, nor could he borrow the power of the three elders. His own strength was no match for the yin-yang spiritual vein, which made him frown. At this moment, Sulitsi, who had been thinking for a long time, suddenly asked, "Yezi, can you live in the apartment for a while?" After forcibly suppressing the troubles brought by the yin-yang spiritual vein, Zhang Fengjai thought about it and knew the reason why Sulitsi asked him to live in the apartment. It was nothing more than hoping that he could take care of Sulixiu, who had just experienced emotional betrayal and was temporarily unstable. Thinking that even if he returned to Villa number 7 and the Shen family villa, the busy people would not have time to take care of him, Zhang Fengjai nodded and agreed without much hesitation. "No problem. Yezi, I really trouble you." Sulitsi hurriedly thanked him and explained with a guilty look. "It's mainly because Luo 11's attention has been on how to annex the projects and land of Julong Group. I, as the general manager, need to preside over the business of the entire group, and I don't have time to take care of Xiaoxiu for the time being. Sister Litsi, don't worry. I will accompany Xiaoxiu during this period and help her get out of the influence of sadness as soon as possible." While nodding to show understanding, Zhang Fengjai also gave his own guarantee. Smoothly returned to the apartment of Golden Orchid Court, and then arranged Sulixiu on the bed in the bedroom. Afterwards, the two of them fought fiercely on the sofa and carpet in the living room, and Sulitsi simply packed up and left the apartment to go to work. Standing in front of the windowsill in the living room, watching Sulitsi driving a black Jetta car slowly leaving the community, Zhang Fengjai continued to think about how to deal with the yin-yang spiritual vein. The yin-yang spiritual vein is a feng shui treasure land second only to the dragon vein. It has been determined that it cannot rely on the life-saving trump card and the power of the three elders. Then, can we use the means of transforming the feng shui trend to continuously weaken the strength of the earth dragon condensed by the yin-yang spiritual vein, and finally defeat or wipe out the consciousness of the yin-yang spiritual vein with our own strength? Thinking of this, Zhang Fengjai turned and walked to the front of the coffee table, and then used tea to draw the overall layout of the yin-yang spiritual vein, looking for flaws in the feng shui pattern. The abandoned factory building on the west side and the lush weeds on the east side finally formed an S-shaped dividing line. Seeing the strange feng shui pattern displayed on the coffee table, Zhang Fengjai's eyes flashed with a look of enlightenment, and his face gradually showed excitement, and he whispered to himself, "If the feng shui trend of the flour mill is completely changed to the feng shui pattern of the 5 elements in the name of building a leisure green park, it will not only corrode the yin and yang in the spirit veins and quickly weaken the strength of the spirit vein consciousness, but also be a good deed with immeasurable merits. However, if you want to complete the transformation of the 5 elements feng shui pattern in the shortest time, you need to invest a lot of energy and funds. With the current situation faced by Luo 11 and Brother Zhu, I am afraid that they will not be able to help in a short time. Moreover, the Leisure Green Park is a public welfare project. Even if the government agrees to build it, I am afraid it will not provide any financial support. It is a completely losing business. Brother-in-law, what are you doing?" Just when Zhang Fengjai was thinking hard, Sulixiu's voice suddenly came to his ears. Seeing that Sulixiu was tired but not trying to commit suicide, Zhang Fengjai breathed a sigh of relief and greeted her with a smile. "Xiaoxiu, you're awake." The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 464. In the apartment of Golden Orchid Court. Walking to Zhang Fengjai's side, he carefully looked at the picture drawn by the tea on the coffee table. A familiar feeling gradually came to his heart. Sulixiu made a surprised sound and couldn't help but recall it. "Xiaoxiu, this is the feng shui pattern of the flour mill." Although she didn't want Sulixiu to be reminded of the sad past, the nearly 60% similar scenes and the unforgettable impressions would sooner or later remind her of the specific environment presented in the scenes, so Zhang Fengjai still chose to confess truthfully. "Brother-in-law, What do you want to do by drawing the architectural layout of the flour mill? When she heard about the abandoned flour mill, she thought of Wang Hao, who was shot by herself. A trace of sadness flashed in Sulixiu's eyes. She was silent for a while, and then asked softly. This. The relationship between them was not very familiar, so Zhang Fengjai didn't know whether he should tell the truth. Brother-in-law, I am your sister-in-law. We are a family that loves each other. Do you have any secrets that you want to hide from my sister and me? Zhang Fengjai's hesitation made Sulixiu complain with dissatisfaction, and even mentioned Sulixi specifically. Xiaoxiu, I have no intention of hiding anything from you. I am mainly worried that you will laugh at my idea. Thinking that transforming the feng shui pattern was the only way he could deal with the yin and yang spiritual veins at present, and also wanted to hear Sulixiu's views on building a leisure green park, Zhang Fengjai started to introduce his plan in detail after getting vaccinated in advance. Brother-in-law, although I won't laugh at your idea, I have to ask you, what is the reason for you to do this? After hearing Zhang Fengjai's detailed introduction, Sulixiu frowned and asked with a puzzled look in her eyes. You know, without government policy support, if you want to complete the park renovation project in a short time, you need to spend at least nearly 300 million yuan. Moreover, the leisure and greening park is a purely public welfare project and will not bring you any benefits or profits afterwards. Let's spend money and eliminate disasters. Since the secret of yin and yang spiritual veins cannot be revealed, Zhang Fengjai had already thought of the reasons to deal with Sulixiu's doubts when he introduced the idea of building a leisure green park. Although Wang Hao and his men deserved their death, killing someone is a derogatory thing after all, especially for a Taoist monk like me, so I hope to make up for the loss through the good deed of building a park for free. Yinda. So that's what happened. Thinking that the various mysterious methods Zhang Fengjai displayed were obviously beyond the abilities of normal people, Sulixiu nodded without any doubt at the reasons he just gave, and then lowered her head to think deeply. Sulixiu, who had been thinking deeply for nearly 10 minutes, raised her head again and asked with an expectant look. Brother-in-law, can you give me the project of building a leisure and green park? After looking up and down, Zhang Fengjai couldn't help but frown. Brother-in-law, don't you believe me? Facing Zhang Fengjai's questioning tone, Sulixiu asked the same question with a hint of displeasure. That's right. I really don't believe you. Since the construction of the leisure green park is related to the yin and yang spiritual veins, no mistakes can be made during the construction process. Therefore, in a situation where the matter was of great importance, Zhang Fengjai chose to ignore Sulixiu's displeased expression and nodded heavily. Snort. After snorting quite dissatisfied, Sulixiu turned around and walked to the refrigerator in the kitchen and took out 2 bottles of beer from the open refrigerator. After throwing the opened bottle of beer to Zhang Fengjai, she sat directly on the soft sofa, drinking beer while giving reasons why she could be responsible for the engineering transformation. First of all, I graduated from the Planning and Design major of the Royal Institute of Architecture in the provincial capital. I can participate in the design and construction of the entire park with a very professional vision to ensure the smooth progress of the entire project. Secondly, in the past 2 years that Wang Hao and I have been friends, I have been mainly responsible for helping him handle both black and white public relations. I was able to apply for approval procedures for the renovation of the flour mill from the government. Finally, I learned that Wang Hao has a large collection of precious celebrity calligraphy and paintings and gold and silver jewelry in a villa in the suburbs, which is enough to exchange for all the funds needed to build a leisure and green park. Xiaoxiu, thank you for your hard work. After hearing the 3 reasons given by Sulixiu, a look of surprise flashed in Zhang Fengjai's eyes, and then he decided to hand over the leisure and greening park project to Sulixiu. Brother-in-law, do you have time now? The moment she received Zhang Fengjai's consent, Sulixiu immediately straightened her body and asked. Yes, Zhang Fengjai nodded and replied. Brother-in-law, let's go to Wang Hao's villa in the suburbs immediately. Don't let others take away the gold and silver jewelry and celebrity calligraphy and paintings. First Suligzu, who put the beer bottle on the coffee table and stood up, urged. Walk. Since the gold and silver jewelry and celebrity calligraphy and paintings hidden in the villa were related to the funds for the construction of the Leisure Green Park, Zhang Fengjai did not dare to take it lightly and quickly followed Suligzu out of the apartment, and then took a taxi to Heshuo community in the south of the city. Heshuo community is a high-end community integrating high-quality high-rise buildings and single-family villas. The architectural layout of the entire community is not only very reasonable, but the interior decoration is also very quiet and warm. It can be regarded as a relatively sincere and conscientious project. However, the remote geographical location and the government's sudden change in the development direction affected the sales of the entire community, and ultimately led to an occupancy rate of only 3.5%. This is also an important reason why Wang Hao chose to hide his wealth in the villa. After all, with an occupancy rate close to vacancy, no one would notice his presence, nor would it attract thieves. Because the occupancy rate of the entire community is so low, it is impossible to hire a formal property company, so there is not even a security guard to guard the gate of the community. After paying and getting off the car, Zhang Fengjai stood on the empty road, looked up and took a rough look at the feng shui pattern of the community, and a look of doubt appeared in his eyes. Because of the remote geographical location, there are not many buildings around the Heshuo community. But the river about 50 meters to the east of the community, the endless fruit forest to the south, the undulating hills to the west, and the subway passing by in the north fully meet the feng shui trend of the 5 elements. In theory, even with the influence of policy development, the houses and villas in the community should not be unsaleable. Xiaoxiu, which real estate company developed the Heshuo community, Zhang Fengjai couldn't help but ask after following Suligzu into the community. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yanyun Yuqi. Chapter 465. In Heshuo community. Brother-in-law, its torch group, which ranks third in Ningji city. After taking a look at the brand new high-rise building, and the green rockery and corridors in the community, Suligzu explained with a hint of regret. In fact, with the qualifications, funds, and connections accumulated by Torch Group over the years, it has the strength and opportunity to surpass Zhulang Group and become the leader of Ningji city's real estate. But dragged down by the poor sales of Heshuo community, not only did it lose the opportunity to surpass Zhulang Group, but it was overtaken by Yongsheng Group where my sister is. After hearing Suligzu's explanation, Zhang Fengjai's puzzled look became more intense. Because he was able to achieve the second place in Ningji city's real estate, it shows that Sun Shuxian, the chairman of Torch Group, should be a smart and cautious person. Then, before he chose to develop the project of Heshuo community, he would definitely understand the government's development plan in advance, and would also hire a real feng shui master to participate in the project planning, so there should be no problems. Brother-in-law, we're here. After bypassing the artificial pond and rockery, Suligzu pointed to an independent villa 30 meters away and reminded him. After temporarily suppressing the troubles of the sales problems in Heshuo community, Zhang Fengjai looked up at the luxury villa pointed by Suligzu. If the advantages of feng shui are thrown away, the 3-story villa with a separate door and courtyard in front of him, whether in terms of area or overall architectural style, is slightly better than the villas of the Shen family and Zhu Zhenjun. This is enough to show that Sun Shuxian, chairman of Torch Group, is determined to surpass Chen Yunhan and Zhulang Group. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his eyes gradually saw the situation in the villa room. But at this moment, a beautiful woman in sexy pajamas suddenly appeared in a large bedroom on the 3rd floor of the villa. This made Zhang Fengjai's face change slightly, and he directly reached out to hug Suligzu and hid behind the rockery. Brother-in-law, what's wrong? Suligzu, who was slightly blushing when she felt the strong and powerful arm on her waist, quickly forced herself to divert her attention and asked. There is a beautiful young woman in the villa. That's impossible. After hearing Zhang Fenjai's reply, Sulixiu, whose face suddenly changed, immediately shook her head and questioned. Brother-in-law, this villa is Wang Hao's most important base. No one knows the secret base except me and his confidant Ziohe. Ignoring Sulixiu's doubts for the time being, Zhang Fenjai re-observed the woman who appeared in the villa's bedroom through the gap in the rockery. Coincidentally, the woman in the villa was also standing in front of the windowsill of the bedroom, looking into the distance with a slightly confused look. Zioxiu, the woman in the villa is about 24 or 25 years old, with a face as bright as the autumn moon, a figure like a devil, and a beauty mole as big as a mung bean between her eyebrows. While carefully observing the appearance of the beautiful woman, Zhang Fenjai introduced her in detail. It's her. Just when Zhang Fenjai mentioned that the beautiful woman in the villa had a very obvious beauty mole between her eyebrows, Sulixiu, with a hint of doubt in her eyes, frowned slightly and muttered to herself. How is it possible? With her pure character and rich family property, how could she be with Wang Hao? Zioxiu, who is she? Zhang Fenjai asked after he withdrew his gaze from the beautiful woman in the villa when he heard Sulixiu muttering to herself. Brother-in-law, do you usually watch our Ningji city's TV programs? Especially news and film channels? Never, Zhang Fenjai answered truthfully, probably guessing the reason why Sulixiu suddenly changed the subject. Since he became an adult at the age of 16, he rarely paid attention to TV programs at the provincial and central levels, let alone city-level TV programs. Firstly, he only knew that the news and evening parties that eulogized the merits of the people were too fake and unreal, and he really didn't feel like watching them. Secondly, the plots were getting more and more stupid, and the production of TV dramas and variety shows was getting more and more rubbish, which was simply an insult to his own IQ. Third, there are more and more false advertisements, and some business tycoons and experts seem to be passionate and make people pee, but in fact they are more deceptive than poisonous chicken soup. They make him feel disgusted and want to vomit. Brother-in-law, in our Ningji City TV station, there are 3 top beauties who are known as news pearls and film and television beauties. Because she rarely watches TV programs, Sulixiu was not surprised at Zhang Fenjai's answer and began to introduce the origin of the woman in the villa in detail. The news pearl refers to Su Zioxiu, the host of the news channel, and the film and television twins refer to Yu Jiakai and Ren Yuyi, the 2 leading actresses of the film and television channel. The woman with a beauty mole between her eyebrows is Su Zioxiu, the host of the news channel, known as the pure and innocent water lotus. But she had already married Lu Suanjun, the garlic king of Liangxiang County, in a very high-profile manner at the end of last year. How could she have been secretly involved with Wang Hao? Lu Suanjun, known as the garlic king of Liangxiang County, is also a legendary and well-known figure in Ningji City. He is a wealthy man who pays attention to simplicity and low-key in life and is keen on being high-profile in his dealings with others. Since Shen Shengao had business dealings with Lu Suanjun before his death, Zhang Fenjai had met him once with Shen Loxi. Although they had no communication, the dark cloud covering his forehead still left him with a slight impression. Recalling the financial disaster shown on Lu Suanjun's face, combined with his unique living habits, Zhang Fenjai could vaguely guess the reason why Su Zioxiu appeared in Wang Hao's private villa. He took another look at the villa through the gap of the rockery and found that Su Zioxiu had left the windowsill and closed the curtains. He directly put his arm around Sulixiu's waist and rushed to the villa with the breeze step. In response, Sulixiu's face was just slightly blushing, and she did not resist this somewhat intimate move. Gently jumped over the 2-meter-high courtyard wall and landed steadily in the courtyard of the villa. But at this moment, a black Tibetan mastiff like a calf suddenly stood up. Black Lion, sit down. Just when Zhang Fenjai was about to use his sharp eyes to scare the black Tibetan mastiff, Sulixiu rushed to the black Tibetan mastiff one step ahead, and then ordered with a gentle look. The black Tibetan mastiff sat down obediently, licked Sulixiu's jade hand with its tongue, and then stared at Zhang Fenjai with a very fierce look. Even the monsters in the foundation building realm did not dare to be so rampant in front of him. The black Tibetan Mastiff's reckless behavior made Zhang Fengjai feel unhappy, and his eyes gradually showed a murderous look. After the fierce look in his eyes was instantly replaced by fear, the black Tibetan Mastiff turned and hid in the corner, lying there trembling all over. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yanyun Yuchi. Chapter 466. In Heshuo Community. Well. Not noticing anything unusual about the black Tibetan Mastiff, Sulixia turned around and looked at the familiar environment and villa in front of her. With a trace of accidental injury in her eyes, she couldn't help but sigh, and then walked towards the door of the villa. At the same time, Zhang Fengjai also quickly followed. Reaching out to push open the door of the villa, passing through the living room paved with expensive carpets, and passing through the mahogany stairs, Sulixia finally arrived at a large study room on the third floor. Then, she pointed to the spacious study room in front of her, covering an area of over 100 square meters, and reminded her with a hint of pain. Brother-in-law, I only know that every time Wang Hao gets a relatively precious antique calligraphy, painting, or gold and silver jewelry, he will enter the study alone, but I don't know where exactly he hides it in the study. When they fell in love with each other before, she didn't have much thought about Wang Hao's deliberately defensive behavior. Looking back now, she feels that she was really carried away by love at the beginning. How could she trust the other party so much that she deliberately ignored some of the other party's selfish actions? Xiaoxiu, leave the next thing to your brother-in-law. Seeing the pain flashing in Sulixiu's eyes, she knew that touching the scene caused her painful memories. Therefore, Zhang Fengjai did not delay too much, and after a simple sigh of relief, he directly mobilized the gray energy in his dantian to open his eyes, and then quickly scanned the corners of the study. Finally, my eyes rested on the bookcase with vases and porcelain. He walked quickly to the bookcase, carefully observed the dozen or so pieces of exquisite porcelain placed on the bookcase, and then reached out to touch a fake exquisite blue and white porcelain vase. He lifted the blue and white porcelain vase forcefully, but it didn't move at all. Turn the blue and white porcelain vase clockwise, but it still doesn't move at all. Turning the blue and white porcelain vase counterclockwise turned around very easily. Immediately afterwards, a stone door slowly opened on the wall with pictures of the 4 seasons of spring, summer, autumn, and winter hanging on it. What a cunning method! Since there are 6 identical bookcases placed vertically in the entire study room, and each bookcase has 18 identical pieces of exquisite porcelain, even if you are doubtful about the porcelain on the bookcase, you will probably be confused by the hundreds of pieces. The fine porcelain confuses the eyes, making it impossible to accurately find the real mechanism that opens the darkroom. So, looking at the slowly opening stone door, Sulixiu sighed with a very complicated expression. Xiaoxiu, let's go. After the stone door was completely opened, Zhang Fengjai reminded Sulixiu, and then walked towards the steps behind the stone door. But at this moment, a questioning voice suddenly came from behind. Who are you? Why did you break into my villa? Although my eyes have been trained since I was a child, I can clearly see objects 100 meters away, but there are still some subtle differences between seeing at close range. For example, the delicate and smooth skin, the pure and holy temperament, the tension in the clear eyes, and the 2 tall and attractive mountain peaks. Turning around and looking at Su Shaoxiu, who was standing at the door of the study, Zhang Fengjai finally knew why she had the title of Ice Pure Jade Water Lotus after a stunning look flashed in her eyes. Su Shaoxiu, I want to ask you the same question, why did you break into my villa? Sulixiu, who also turned around, asked without hiding the contempt in her eyes. Your villa. When Su Shaoxiu heard Sulixiu's question, a flash of astonishment flashed in his eyes, and he couldn't help but glance at the study. When she noticed the stone door and secret passage behind Sulixiu, her eyes showed disbelief, and she began to question herself. This is impossible. Wang Hao clearly promised me personally that this villa is a birthday gift to me. The more he questioned to himself, the heavier the doubts in his heart became. Finally, Su Xiaoxiu couldn't help but take out her mobile phone from her pajamas pocket and start dialing Wang Hao's number. Su Xiaoxiu, don't waste your time on the phone because Wang Hao has already gone to the underworld to report to the Lord of Hell. Su Xiaoxiu's panicked reaction made Sulixiu realize that she might have been deceived by Wang Hao. Thinking that she had also been deceived by Wang Hao for more than 2 years, she couldn't help but remind her with an unbearable sympathy. Sulixiu's kind reminder made Su Xiaoxiu's face turn pale instantly. When the mobile phone heard the notification that she was not in the service area, Su Xiaoxiu seemed to have lost all her energy in an instant, and fell directly to the floor of the study room, with helpless tears in her eyes. Brother-in-law, you go in by yourself first. I'll give her some advice. When she thought of the moment when she was betrayed by Wang Hao and had the same reaction as Su Xiaoxiu, a feeling of sympathy instantly emerged in her heart, which made Sulixiu feel pity and want to help her get out of her sadness. Okay, please pay attention to your own safety. After using his unclosed sky eye to see Su Xiaoxiu's face and confirming that she was not in any danger, Zhang Fengjai nodded and stepped up the steps into the secret passage. The depth of the secret passage is not very long, only about 20 meters. At the end is a storage room made of reinforced concrete. The area of the storage room is not very large, only about 10 square meters. There are 3 wooden boxes about 1.5 meters long and 1 meter wide and high. His eyes swept over one of the wooden boxes. After confirming that there was no danger, he reached out and opened the wooden box. Then, the golden light emanating from the wooden box made him squint his eyes slightly. Gold bars. After seeing a pile of dazzling gold bars neatly placed in the wooden box, Zhang Fengjai showed a look of surprise in his eyes, and then he began to count the number of gold bars directly. 108 gold bars, each weighing exactly 1 kilogram. If estimated according to the current market price, the total value of these gold bars is about 60 million. Of course, the real reason for his surprise was not the money exchanged for these gold bars, but the ability to use these high-purity gold to refine a kind of auxiliary magic weapon in Taoism. After taking a deep breath and suppressing the joy that emerged in his heart, Zhang Fengjai reached out to open the second wooden box, and then found that there were more than a dozen rolled-up scrolls, as well as some diamonds and jewelry in the wooden box. After taking out a scroll from the wooden box and unfolding it, it was found that it was a painting of fishing in the bamboo forest by Zheng Bangqiao, a famous painter in the Qing dynasty, and it was a genuine original. If estimated according to the current auction market price, the final transaction price of this painting is about 20 million. Although influenced by his great-grandfather, he has a deeper understanding of antique calligraphy and paintings, but he himself does not like to collect these old things, so he re-rolled up the famous painting and threw it directly into the wooden box, and then reached out to open the third wooden box. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 467. In the dark room of Wang Hao's villa. When the third wooden box was opened, a musty and pungent smell came to his face, which made Zhang Fengjai take 3 steps back without any hesitation. After the musty smell dissipated, he walked back to the wooden box and found 7 old antiques in it. An emerald ring, a gold crown made of pure gold and gemstones, a crystal-clear Senkaiu cup, a pair of very delicate 8-sided bowls, a set of 4 9-dragon jade cups with a 9-dragon jade pot, a glazed red pine, bamboo and plum pattern jar, and a sharp dagger. Whether it is the old smell or the shape and pattern that carries history, Zhang Fengjai can not only be 100% sure that the 7 antiques are authentic, but also know that they are all burial objects in the Ming dynasty, and the time of excavation will not exceed half a year. This also indirectly proves that the Chamber of Commerce established by Wang Hao not only committed the crimes of gang fighting, extortion and drug trafficking, but also secretly engaged in tomb robbing and reselling the country's ancient tombs. The sins committed are not too much to be shot 10 times. If calculated according to the law of cause and effect, Sulixiu, who shot Wang Hao personally, not only did not violate the laws of the underworld, but also accumulated good deeds. The 7 antiques are all priceless cultural relics. With the celebrity calligraphy and paintings and diamond jewelry in another box, it is more than enough to build 3 leisure green parks. Therefore, Zhang Fengjai, with a happy smile on his face, directly stacked the 3 boxes together, and then used the strength of his steel and iron bones to carry the 3 boxes out of the dark room in one breath. When he put the 3 boxes on the floor of the study, he found that Su Zhaoxiu, who had barely recovered his spirit under Sulixiu's comfort, was sobbing softly. "Brother-in-law, how is it?" Seeing the 3 wooden boxes Zhang Fengjai put on the ground, Sulixiu asked with expectation in her eyes. "Pa, Pa." Zhang Fengjai patted the wooden box hard and replied with a smile. "Even if it is handled through private channels, the funds exchanged are enough to build 3 parks." "Great!" Sulixiu shouted excitedly after the gains exceeded her expectations, and then a hint of hesitation gradually appeared in her eyes, and then she asked carefully. "Brother-in-law, can you lend me the remaining funds after building the park temporarily? It takes about 300 million yuan to build a leisure green park, and the remaining funds are as high as more than 600 million yuan. Although she took the initiative to provide the news of these antiques, calligraphy and paintings, gold and silver treasures, if Zhang Fengjai did not use special means to find the entrance to the dark room, then the news would never be exchanged for wealth. What's more, Zhang Fengjai needs to find a way to deal with these antiques and calligraphy and paintings that cannot be seen in the light. No need to borrow, the remaining money is all yours." Zhang Fengjai gestured very generously. "Brother-in-law, the remaining money is this amount, don't you feel bad at all?" Sulixiu asked in disbelief, making a 6 with her right hand. "Zhaoxiu, let alone this amount, even if there is another 0 after this amount, I will give it to you without hesitation." Facing Sulixiu's questioning, Zhang Fengjai replied in a nonchalant tone. "Who made you Sister Litzi's biological sister, my biological sister-in-law?" In fact, it was different from what Sulixiu had imagined just now. Although he discovered these gold antiques and calligraphy and paintings, and he personally handled them afterwards, according to the calculation of cause and effect, Sulixiu, who had an intimate relationship with Wang Hao, was actually the real owner of these gold antiques and calligraphy and paintings. Not only did he take out 1/3 of the funds to build the park, but he also privately intercepted 108 gold bars to refine Taoist instruments, which had already formed a de facto debt. Therefore, he had to find a way to repay Sulixiu's kindness and erase the impact of cause and effect afterwards. "Brother-in-law, thank you." Walking to Zhang Fengjai's side, Sulixiu hugged him tightly with both hands around his waist, and thanked him excitedly. "Okay, do we still need to be so polite and distant between us?" After quietly breaking away from Sulixiu's embrace, Zhang Fengjai pretended to criticize him unhappily, then took out his mobile phone and started to contact Zhu Zhenjun. When Zhu Zhenjun answered the call, he immediately ordered the other party to arrange a small truck to rush to Heshuo community as quickly as possible. After hanging up the phone, Zhang Fengjai quietly pointed at Su Shaoxiu, who stopped sobbing, with an inquiring look in his eyes. After nodding secretly, Sulixiu gave a loud instruction, then turned and walked towards Su Shaoxiu. "Brother-in-law, wait in the study for a while. I'll go see Sister Su off." Looking at Sulixiu and Su Shaoxiu leaving the study, Zhang Fengjai's eyes flashed with a trace of doubt, and then he shook his head vigorously, then walked to the window sill of the study and used the sky eye to re-observe the feng shui pattern of Heshuo community. After all, it was obviously a very superior feng shui treasure land, but he encountered the dilemma of not being able to sell houses and villas. This phenomenon that completely violated the feng shui trend and luck made him feel very uncomfortable. The water element gathered by the river in the east, the wood element condensed by the orchard in the south, and the earth element emerging from the hills in the west, like waves, poured into the community, making the air in the Heshuo community, which accumulated more and more 5 elements, fresher and fresher, and the wealth and fortune became more and more prosperous. It is definitely a feng shui blessed land worth leisure, living and investment. Then, the final reason for the unfavorable sales of the community is likely to be inside the Pegatron community. He took out a sealing talisman from his sleeve and used gray energy to stick it on the wooden box. Zhang Fengjai climbed over the window and climbed directly to the roof. Then he used his condescending advantage to take an all-round look at the layout of the community. This is. When the gaze of the heavenly eye was attracted by a black evil aura, Zhang Fengjai temporarily closed the heavenly eye and looked again, and found that in the man-made pond, there was a statue of a 3-legged golden toad submerged in the water. The 3-legged golden toad, also known as the Toad Palace, is a mythical animal that represents auspiciousness and has the implication of attracting wealth. As a representative of auspicious objects, the 3-legged golden toad with a hint of spirituality usually appears in gold and purple. After all, gold represents wealth and purple symbolizes nobility. However, the 3-legged golden toad in the pond was a sinister black color, which made him vaguely feel that the reason for the poor sales of Heshuo community may be directly related to the 3-legged golden toad in the pond. "Brother-in-law, where have you been?" He wanted to use Qingfeng's step to rush towards the pond, but Sulixiu's voice suddenly came from the study, which forced him to temporarily suppress the idea of observing the 3-legged golden toad, and then return to the study along the window. Inside. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 468. In the study room of Wang Hao's villa. Looking at Zhang Fengjai jumping in from the window, Sulixiu, with a hint of doubt in her eyes, immediately asked in confusion. "Brother-in-law, what were you doing just now?" "Nothing, I just stood on the roof to see the scenery of the community." After making up a random excuse to deal with it, Zhang Fengjai directly led the topic to Su Zioxiu, who had just left. "Zioxiu, what happened to the beautiful host just now?" Alas! When Zhang Fengjai asked about Su Zioxiu's situation, Sulixiu couldn't help but sighed and began to introduce Su Zioxiu's experience of beauty and misfortune in detail. As the famous garlic king of Liangxiang County, Lu Suanjun is not only worth more than 10 billion, but also just over 40 years old, in the prime time of youth and strength, which is why Su Zioxiu is willing to marry him. After all, as the leading actress of the news channel, she has a peerless face and is considered a 4th or 5th tier star, big or small, and ordinary rich people really can't catch her eye. But what Su Zioxiu never expected was that although Lu Suanjun was generous to his friends and clients, he was very stingy and mean to his family. He only gave her more than 20,000 yuan a month for living expenses, which was not even 1/10 of her income as a host. Of course, if it was just an economic problem, Su Zioxiu, who was still relatively traditional in character, would not be unbearable. But Lu Suanjun, who was only 40 years old, was actually a 3-second man. For Su Zioxiu, who was in her youth and coveted the pleasure of waterfish, it was no different from being a widow. Wang Hao and Lu Suanjun were not only fellow villagers in the same town, but also had a good relationship with each other. They often got together to have fun. As for Su Zioxiu, the leading actress of Ningji City News Channel, who was known as the pure and innocent water lotus, Wang Hao also coveted and pursued her for a long time, but her shady Chamber of Commerce background made her finally choose Lu Suanjun, a legal businessman. One was a fierce woman who was unwilling to be a widow, and the other was a handsome man who was good at sweet talk. One was a man with feelings, and the other was a woman with intentions. Finally, the two of them had sex at a private party 3 months ago. As the saying goes, men cheat with their kidneys, women cheat with their hearts. Whether it was sweet words, generous spending, handsome looks, or a sturdy figure, Wang Hao's performance was hundreds and thousands of times better than Lu Suanjun's, and he completely captured Su Zhaoxiu's heart in a short time. At the same time, Wang Hao, who was good at disguising himself, had always been a bachelor in the love and business fields, which made Su Zhaoxiu completely determined to tear her face with Lu Suanjun and divorce vigorously. After more than a month of negotiations, at 9 o'clock this morning, Su Zhaoxiu finally chose to give up all her property and leave the house, and then pursue the happy life she expected and desired. But what was the final result? Not only was the dream of a happy life shattered, but even the good reputation accumulated over the years was completely ruined. After all, people have different tolerance levels for cheating between men and women, and Su Zhaoxiu's celebrity status is also different from that of ordinary people. Compared with Su Lixiu's pity and sympathy, Zhang Fengjai feels that Su Zhaoxiu's experience is her own fault. If Su Zhaoxiu really doesn't want to continue to maintain the marriage, she can be completely honest with Lu Suanjun. Because Lu Suanjun's face-saving personality, in order to preserve the dignity of a 3-second man and to be able to completely shut her mouth, he will not only divorce her happily, but also will never dare to treat her badly during the divorce, so that she can also be regarded as having a rich life through marriage. But her divorce in the name of cheating is equivalent to giving Lu Suanjun a green hat directly. With Lu Suanjun's personality and status, how can he tolerate such a great shame that concerns a man's dignity? Therefore, leaving the house with nothing is just a means for Lu Suanjun to give in, and there may be more cruel revenge waiting for her next. Moreover, according to the face he saw before entering the dark room, if there is no external help, the psychological collapse after being disgraced may eventually lead Su Zhaoxiu to a dead end. Therefore, Zhang Fengjai is also considering whether to help her resolve the catastrophe of life and death. Beep, beep, beep. Just as Zhang Fengjai and Su Lixiu were immersed in their own feelings because of Su Zhaoxiu's experience, the sound of a car horn suddenly rang out of the villa. He rushed to the windowsill in 3 or 2 steps, looked at the pickup truck parked at the gate of the villa, and the young driver sitting in the driver's seat, and asked loudly about the other party's origin. After learning that the young driver was the helper sent by Zhu Zhenjun, he turned around and picked up the 3 large boxes and left the study and villa, and then put them in the cargo compartment behind the pickup truck. Considering that the antique calligraphy and paintings and gold bars and jewelry in the 3 wooden boxes were all dirty things that could not be exposed to light, Zhang Fengjai simply sat in the cargo compartment with the wooden boxes for fear of unexpected accidents during transportation. And Su Lixiu, who subconsciously wanted to be with him, finally chose to sit in the cargo compartment with him. When the pickup truck left the villa and passed by the pond, Zhang Fengjai immediately stood up and carefully observed the detailed structure of the 3-legged golden toad statue in the pond. When he saw the faint scarlet blood in the stone eyes of the 3-legged golden toad statue, a flash of inspiration suddenly flashed through his mind, allowing him to roughly guess the reason for the poor sales of Heshuo community. At the same time, the bleak sales dilemma also made him think of a way to make huge profits in a short period of time. Zhaoxiu, according to your experience, if all the houses and villas in Heshuo community can be sold out in a short period of time, how much profit can Torch Group finally get? After hearing Zhang Fengjai's question, Su Lixiu thought for a while, then shook her head and explained with a wry smile. Brother-in-law, your question really stumped me. Because the final profit of a residential community involves land prices, materials, costs, labor, taxes, discounts, and other aspects, I am afraid that only the financial department of Torch Group can calculate the final profit preparation figure. Since the final sales profit cannot be accurately estimated, it is impossible to smoothly use the means of making huge profits. This made Zhang Fengjai turn his head and look at the increasingly distant Heshuo community, and couldn't help frowning. Fortunately, making huge profits by solving the dilemma of Feng Shui pattern is just an idea he had on his mind, and he didn't take it seriously in his heart. So, when the scene of Heshuo community completely disappeared from sight, Zhang Fenjai's attention returned to the antique calligraphy and paintings. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 469. Under Zhang Fenjai's guidance and reminders, the pickup truck driver finally stopped in front of a 3-story pawn shop after more than half an hour of driving. When the pickup truck slowly stopped, Solitsi turned her head and looked at the pawn shop with the Tongda sign in front of her, and reminded with doubt in her eyes. Brother-in-law, the batch of antique calligraphy and paintings and gold and silver jewelry in our hands are all dirty things that cannot be seen in the light. If you sell them through a regular pawn shop, you will get yourself into trouble. Xiaoxiu, don't worry, brother-in-law knows what's going on. After a smile and comfort, Zhang Fenjai jumped directly from the cargo box of the pickup truck, and then walked towards the lobby of Tongda pawn shop. At the same time, Solixu also got out of the car and followed. When entering the lobby through the automatic sensor door, a beautiful girl in a professional suit and with beautiful eyebrows and eyes came to greet him. Hello, sir. Is there anything I can do for you? Ask Huzikan to see me. Zhang Fenjai frowned and ordered. Because the beautiful girl in front of him, although her tone of greeting seemed very enthusiastic, the disgust flashing in her eyes from time to time showed that she was also a very powerful person. Seeing that the boy in front of him, who was very ordinary in appearance and clothing and slightly thin, not only called the pawn shop owner by name, but also ordered the owner to come downstairs in person, the beautiful girl was immediately displeased and refused in a cold tone. Mr. Who is not here, you should come another day. Are you sure? Zhang Fenjai could see that the beautiful girl was lying, and he asked back with an equally displeased look. That's right, the beautiful girl nodded to confirm. In that case, I will go to the office and wait for him to come back. Not wanting to talk nonsense with the beautiful girl who was lying in front of him, Zhang Fenjai bypassed her and ran straight to the stairs leading to the second floor. Boy, it seems that you are here to cause trouble today. After winking at the young men in suits in the corner of the hall, the beautiful girl quickly stood in front of him, and then threatened with a slight smile on her lips. Little girl, if you don't want to lose your current job, either go upstairs and call Huzikan down, or get out of my way immediately. Facing the threat of the beautiful girl, Zhang Fenjai's tone gradually became sharp and scolded. Ha ha. After 2 disdainful sneers, the beautiful girl responded with a hint of pride. Little friend, Mr. Who is not only my father's best friend, but also the master who taught me to learn antique calligraphy and painting, so no one in the entire pawn shop is qualified to dismiss me except my master. Hearing the beautiful girl's reply about passing on the teachings, Zhang Fenjai's eyes flashed with a terrifying cold light, and he mobilized the strength of his steel-like body into his right foot, and then suddenly lifted it up and stepped heavily on the marble floor. Boom! Accompanied by a dull roar, the marble that was stepped on by the right foot did not have any cracks, but the whole building shook violently, and almost caused the antiques on the exhibition stands to fall. At the same time, Zhang Fenjai shouted loudly in the direction of the stairs. Huzikan, get out of here immediately. Brother Hua, throw this kid out of the pawn shop immediately. The angry and embarrassed girl immediately ordered a young man with a slightly protruding temple. However, facing the order of the beautiful girl, the young man called Brother Hua not only did not act immediately, but bowed with a flattering smile on his face. Junior Renrun Hua has met the young man. I wonder who the young man is from. What is the relationship with our boss Hu? The beautiful girl, who is just an ordinary person, does not know the power of the step of the thin boy in front of her just now, but Renrun Hua, who has reached the peak of internal strength, knows it very well. Only when the inner force reaches the realm of acquired martial arts and the control of power reaches a meticulous level, can the 3-story building be shaken by the force of stepping. Facing a master of this realm, Even if all the inner masters of the pawn shop attack together, they may not be able to defeat the opponent with one move. More importantly, only warriors from top forces can break through the bottleneck of inner force and impact acquired martial arts before the age of 30 with the complete inheritance of clothing and the power of medicine. Therefore, Ren Runhua's initiative to show goodwill, in addition to not wanting to be abused and humiliated, is also not to cause trouble for his boss. However, before Zhang Fengjai opened his mouth to answer Ren Runhua's question, the beautiful girl shouted angrily. Ren Runhua, is it that I, Ding Hui, can't order you now, or do you no longer take me and the master seriously and want to rebel? Miss Ding, please listen to my explanation first. Facing Ding Hui's scolding, Ren Runhua hurriedly stepped forward and planned to quietly explain the reason why he couldn't easily offend the thin boy. But Ding Hui, who was completely blinded by anger, or spoiled by Hu Zikan, shook her head and refused to listen to Ren Runhua's explanation, and continued to order him to drive Zhang Fengjai away. As a person who has been in the Chamber of Commerce for more than 2 years, Su Lixu has long developed the habit of using violence to solve problems. So, seeing Ding Hui, who dared to despise and neglect her brother-in-law, still wanted to humiliate Zhang Fengjai without knowing the consequences, she couldn't control her inner anger and asked, "Brother-in-law, can I teach her a lesson now?" "Okay, be careful." Zhang Fengjai was too embarrassed to teach a weak and ordinary woman a lesson, and was also angry at her rudeness and unreasonableness, so when faced with Su Lixu's initiative, he could only nod his head and agree. "If you do it, the meridians will be broken at best, and the Danshan will be destroyed at worst," Zhang Fengjai warned Ren Runhua and others as Su Lixu moved her fingers back and forth towards Ding Hui. "What do you want to do?" Ding Hui asked timidly as she saw Su Lixu walking over with a bad girl's grin on her face. "Pa." But what answered her was a very loud and hot slap in the ear, and Su Lixu's angry insults. "You bitch, dare to despise and neglect my most respected brother-in-law, I will slap you in the face." After the insults, Su Lixu took advantage of Ding Hui's temporary daze and slapped her hard with both hands. "Pa, pa, pa. Stop." Just when Su Lixu had slapped him 12 times and was about to continue, a majestic voice suddenly came from the stairs. Zhang Fengjai, with his hands behind his back, looked up at the middle-aged man walking slowly down the stairs, and ordered Su Lixu with a gloomy face. "Zioxiu, come back." The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 470. In Tongda Pawn Shop. Walking to Ding Hui's side, the middle-aged man shouted at Zhang Fengjai in an unhappy tone when he saw her pretty cheeks swollen like a red apple. "Zhang Fengjai, why do you bully my disciple? Hu Zikan, do you have the qualifications to call me by my name? Or have you forgotten your identity?" Facing the middle-aged man's disrespectful question, Zhang Fengjai asked sternly with a gloomy face. "Ha ha." Hearing the qualifications and identity mentioned in Zhang Fengjai's question, Hu Zikan couldn't help laughing up to the sky. After laughing for 30 seconds, Hu Zikan suddenly stopped laughing and retorted with a look of resentment in his eyes. 10 years ago, I knelt in front of your Zhang family for a day and a night, begging your great-grandfather to accept me as a disciple, but your great-grandfather finally ruthlessly rejected me. Now, you are questioning me with your identity and qualifications. Don't you think it's ridiculous? Hu Zikan, my great-grandfather has vowed not to accept any close disciples since the day he chose to retire to the mountains. You know this." Facing Hu Zikan's indignant rebuttal, Zhang Fengjai couldn't help but frown and remind him. "Moreover, my great-grandfather finally agreed to accept you as a registered disciple for the sake of your parents." Tisk. Facing Zhang Fengjai's reminder, Hu Zikan sneered with disdain and continued to refute. "Zhang Fengjai, you still have the nerve to mention the titled disciple in front of me now. To put it nicely, the titled disciple is a probationary staff. Not only does the dirtiest, hardest, and most tiring work belong to you, but you also don't get any benefits. To put it bluntly, the titled disciple is a temporary worker without any guarantee. Not only do you have to take the blame at the critical moment, but you are also facing the end of being kicked out at any time. So, I didn't agree to the titled disciple you gave me at the beginning, and I didn't want to do it at all. Faced with Hu Zikan's nonsense reasons, Zhang Fengjai said sarcastically in anger. Hu Zikan, although there are many shameless people in this world, it is rare to see someone as shameless as you. Mr. Zhang, be careful with your words, otherwise I will report you to the police for defamation, and then pay you to spend the rest of your life in prison. Hu Zikan, with a cold light in his eyes, warned in an unkind tone. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Fengjai continued to question with a cold expression after forcibly suppressing the anger and murderous intent that kept boiling in his heart. Hu Zikan, if you don't want to be my great-grandfather's registered disciple, then why do you enter my Zhang family's manor at will in the name of a registered disciple, and why do you enter my third grandfather's Taoist temple to study various classics? If there were no precious classics collected in the Taoist temple, and my great-grandfather's annotations on the secrets of the past and present, how could you be so successful? Hu Zikan, with a flash of panic in his eyes, also took a deep breath and retorted in an extremely tough tone. Zhang Fengjai, Shushan Taoist Temple is a national asset. As an upright Chinese man, I have the qualifications to browse the Taoist temple classics at will, and your Zhang family has no power to stop it at all. Good, very good, very good. Hu Zikan's rogue and shameless rebuttal made Zhang Fengjai laugh in anger and said 3 times in a row, and directly mobilized the grey energy in his dantian to condense a sharp sword. Looking at the sharp sword that appeared out of thin air, Ren Runhua had a flash of inspiration in his mind, and a look of fear appeared in his eyes. After throwing the condensed sharp sword into the air, he quickly condensed the sword spell with his 10 fingers and shouted. The sky and the earth are boundless, Kinkan sword technique, cause and effect return to the source, cut. Accompanied by Zhang Fengjai's shouting, the sharp sword controlled by the sword spell directly cut through the void above Hu Zikan's head, and then fell back into his hands. At the same time, Ren Runhua, whose look of fear was instantly replaced by determination, gave a wink to several companions around him and began to quietly move away from Hu Zikan and Ding Hui. After dispersing the sharp sword condensed by grey energy, Zhang Fengjai reminded with a cold expression. Hu Zikan, you originally had little luck. Even if you were proficient in the appraisal of antique calligraphy and paintings, it would be difficult to change your fate of poverty. However, the relationship between you and my great-grandfather as a master and disciple has allowed you to obtain a blessing from my Zhang family. The blessing of the Zhang family can not only allow you to have a prosperous life, but also eliminate the disasters brought by bad luck. But now, I have used the Kinkan sword technique to cut off the causal connection between you and the Zhang family's blessing. Next, I will start to appreciate and witness in the car how you, who have suffered the backlash of bad luck, are heading towards destruction step by step. Haha. Faced with Zhang Fengjai's warning, Hu Zikan couldn't help but laugh up to the sky, and at the moment when the laughter ended, he said sarcastically with a look of contempt in his eyes without concealing it. Zhang Fengjai, those ignorant villagers in Zhangjuan call you a little god, so you really think you are a god? What blessing of the Zhang family, what swordsmanship of Kinkan, what backlash of bad luck, bah! For Hu Zikan's ridicule and contempt, Zhang Fengjai was neither angry nor continued to refute and warn. He just greeted Sulixiu with a smile on his face, turned around and left the pawn shop and returned to the pickup truck. Brother-in-law, why don't you teach him a lesson? Sulixiu, unable to suppress her anger, complained to Zhang Fengjai angrily. Xiaoxiu, do you know what the cruelest means of revenge is? Zhang Fengjai asked with a smile while gently patting Sulixiu's back to help her calm down. Brother-in-law, I don't know. After thinking carefully for a while, Sulixiu shook her head and said that she couldn't think of the cruelest means of revenge. Looking up at Hu Zikan and Ding Hui in the pawn shop hall, and seeing the smug smiles on their faces, Zhang Fengjai explained in a gloomy tone. Xiaoxiu, the cruelest revenge is to let Hu Zikan see with his own eyes the mistakes in his appraisal method that he is so proud of, see with his own eyes the rapid decline of the pawn shop he runs, and see with his own eyes the family business he has worked hard to accumulate disappear in a short period of time. In the end, he will kneel down in front of me and beg for mercy because he cannot bear the blow of psychological collapse, and then after losing all hope, he will self-destruct and die. And this cruel revenge is the punishment and price for his betrayal of his master. After closing her eyes and swapping roles, Sulixiu imagined the whole process of Hu Zikan's self-destruction. A chill and fear from the heart made her shiver, and then she opened her eyes and looked at Zhang Fengjai, and gradually revealed a look of horror.